Today we're making 4 gluten-free, healthy-ish baked goodies. These are perfect to have for a snack during the day or a quick breakfast if you don't feel like cooking a hot breakfast one morning. Honestly, they're good any time of day, so let's get straight into baking. We're making muffins, granola, banana bread, and my kid's personal favorite, a lemon poppy seed loaf with a special drizzle on top. First up, we have blueberry crumble top muffins. First, add your gluten-free flour. I use Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1 blue bag. It has to be the blue bag or it won't taste the same. Or I also sometimes use King Arthur's gluten-free blend. You're using 1.5 cups of flour. I've made these muffins probably 100 times. Okay, maybe not 100, but pretty close to. And these are my favorite muffins and have been for years. Then you're gonna add in 1/3 cup of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Then give that a quick mix. This recipe is adapted from all recipes, I believe. I'll link it down below, but I use way less sugar and of course make some tweaks, which you'll see along the way. Then add in 1 egg, 1/3 cup of extra virgin olive oil, though you could also use melted extra virgin coconut oil, which I've done before for extra health benefits. Then about 1/2 cup of almond milk. Mix that, then add in 1.25 cup of frozen wild blueberries. I find these add natural sweetness to the muffins, and that's how I'm able to lower the sugar amount and have them still taste really good. Regular blueberries just aren't as sweet, regular frozen blueberries. So you want to make sure you're using the wild kind. Then you're going to set that aside and make the crumb topping, which is just 1/2 cup of sugar, 1/3 cup of gluten-free flour, and 1/4 cup of cubed vegan butter. I used my own homemade butter in these for the first time, and they actually came out pretty good. But I normally use a store-bought plant-based butter and just cut it up and massage it in. I find my hands is the fastest and the best way to get it nice and incorporated and crumbly. You don't want the mix to be dry, so if it is, keep mixing it or add a little bit more vegan butter if needed. This is key. Do not skip the crumb topping because it just elevates these so much. You're gonna top them and then bake them. Next up, we're making homemade granola. Now, I feel like I've seen so many granola recipes on YouTube in my time, and as someone who has been making homemade granola since I was in high school, this is just my personal way that I make granola. I prefer things to be unmeasured, so I'll kind of walk you through my process and give you tips on how you can make your own to suit your personal taste buds. So I'll be honest with you guys, I make granola every single week and I often change it up slightly by adding different things, but what I'm doing in this video is a pretty standard granola base. So I'm starting by heating up some extra virgin coconut oil, and then I'm adding a little bit of almond butter. Now, almond butter is my secret hack to really leveling up their granola. If you've never tried it, try it. Do yourself a favor and try it. Sometimes I add more, sometimes I add a little bit less, but honestly, the more the better. This is the main base of the granola. This is how the granola is going to turn out after it's baked in terms of moisture wise. I don't want a super dry, crumbly granola. So yeah, don't be afraid of the high fat content in this. I also add a little bit of maple syrup. Personally, you could add honey, but I prefer maple syrup, but do whatever you like. You could also add brown sugar or coconut sugar or a combination of two different kinds of sugars, depending on how sweet you want it. But we're trying to be healthy over here. So I personally don't want a super sugary granola for my family. So I just add a little bit and then I turn off the heat. Then this is optional, but today I'm also adding in some flaxseed for the beneficial fiber and added health benefits. Not a lot though, because too much and you will taste it. Now I'm adding a drizzle of blackstrap molasses. This gives a slightly deep, rich profile. I like to switch things up a little bit, so sometimes I add it, sometimes I don't. Now another important tip in my opinion for getting delicious granola is using a combination of quick oats and old-fashioned oats. Most people just use plain old-fashioned oats, but I like a combination. I'd say I usually do about a 1-to-3 ratio, so about 1/3 of quick oats and then 2/3 of the whole mixture being rolled oats. This is just for texture and taste palette reasons. And again, I eyeball how much oats I put in depending on how much liquid I have. So I just add some oats in, I mix it around, and if it seems like the oats are super saturated, I'll add in more oats to stretch the granola out a bit. It's important that the oats are pretty coated with the mixture though. You don't want super dry oats or it'll bake dry. When I feel like it's a good mix, I spread it out on a parchment lined pan, and this is just for the ease of cleanup and transferring it into a container afterwards. But if you don't have parchment paper, it's totally fine to just add it straight onto your baking tray. You don't need to oil it or anything. Just spread it out pretty evenly. I bake mine on 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 15 minutes, and then I toss it around to see how much longer it needs. And then I just cook it for probably about 5 to 10 more minutes until the edges are just starting to brown. And there you have healthy granola for the whole week. This is a staple for lunches in my household. I usually have it with dairy-free yogurt, frozen blueberries, and my husband put me on having a honey drizzle on top, and that just hits it out the park. Next, we're making a lemon poppy seed loaf, and I prefer weighing the ingredients, honestly, just because it saves a little time and a bunch of dishes, and that's something I always want to do. We all loved baked homemade goodies, but the mess it sometimes can make, not a fan of. So just weigh everything in the bowl if you can. It's such a help. Start by cracking 2 eggs in the bowl and then add 113 grams or half of a cup of plain dairy-free yogurt. I have also used vanilla yogurt when I haven't had any plain dairy-free yogurt, so you could also use vanilla dairy-free yogurt. Then add 112 grams or 1/3 of a cup of honey. And then another thing I do, or rather don't do, is the original recipe that I got this from calls for the zest of 2 lemons, but this just takes forever for me to do, so I usually only zest 1, and then I add like 1 to 2 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice in its place. The zest does make it taste delicious, but me and my kids eat it up either way, so I usually just opt for the time-saving option, which is just squeezing in more lemon juice than zest. But do whatever you like. Most of the time when I'm baking in the kitchen, I try to move as fast as possible because my baby may need me at any moment in time. So that's just what I do. Then add a half a teaspoon of almond extract, mix. Then add all your dry ingredients, which are 92 grams or 1 cup of oat flour, 112 grams or 1 cup of almond flour, 1 tablespoon of poppy seeds, 3/4 teaspoon of baking soda, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Mix that until it's combined. And then also hack, you'll see me do this for the banana bread in a bit also. Whenever you're making loaves, line your loaf pan with more parchment paper so it's easy to lift out of the pan, but also use clothespins to keep the parchment paper sides down while you're pouring your batter. It's a game changer, I tell you, but of course remember to remove the clothespins before you bake your bread in the oven. Now while that bakes, I make the topping. So this topping is optional. I don't make it every time because it's extra sugar, and I do try to be pretty low sugar in my household, but sometimes I make it because it really does taste extra delicious and it's like a treat for my kids. So I went off the measurements in the recipe, which is 1/2 cup of powdered sugar, then 1 to 2 tablespoons of lemon juice and 1/4 teaspoon of almond extract. Then I tweak it to my personal preference. I like it thicker, so I added more powdered sugar. Then I topped it with dye-free natural sprinkles, of course. And this thing was gone the next day. I kid you not. All right, lastly is banana bread. I honestly did not like banana bread until I was pregnant with my 3rd child. It's all I've wanted to eat. So here's the banana bread recipe I've been making. Make sure your bananas are very ripe to give it extra sweetness. But first, make your flax egg if you're using. If not, use a regular egg, which I would actually recommend. Smash 3 bananas in a large bowl. Then add in 1/2 teaspoon of vanilla, your regular egg or flax egg, and then 3 tablespoons of oil. A 1/4 cup of sugar, a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and then 2 tablespoons of maple syrup. You're also going to add 3.5 teaspoons of baking powder, 3/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and 3/4 cup of almond milk, and then give that a stir. And then you're going to add in your dry ingredients, which is 1 1/4 cup of almond flour, 1 1/4 cup of gluten-free flour. Again, use the ones I talked about earlier. And then 1 cup of old-fashioned oats and 1/4 cup of oat flour. Now, the original recipe calls for 1 1/4 cup of oats, but I personally use only 1 cup of oats and then 1/4 cup of oat flour. Again, do it however you like. This is just the way I bake it. You stir it all together, and then you're going to bake it for about 1 hour and 10 minutes. You're going to let it cool a bit and then slice it and enjoy. I like to freeze this banana bread since not everyone in my house is a fan of it. So I slice it up and then freeze it in thick slices so I can pop just a singular piece out and warm it up in the toaster oven whenever I want it. Please let me know down in the comments if you are going to give any of these recipes a try, and also comment which recipe you're going to try first. Give this video a thumbs up, share it with a friend. Thank you all for being here, and remember, God's love for you surpasses your wildest imagination. See you in the next video, friend.